Hey everyone, it's Brandy and welcome back to my channel, Brandy Janae's Bookshelf. So before I even get into today's video, I wanted to talk about my hair. I usually don't talk about my hair, but I feel like this is going to be like a good week for me. I feel like the past couple years my hair has been a little rough. When I was in cosmetology school, I was doing a lot more with it than I normally would, and my hair kind of suffered from that, and I just haven't been taking care of it as well as I had been at one point. So I need a haircut, so it's not like even or anything, and my hair shrinks up, and all of it doesn't shrink to the same length. But anyway, basically the only reason I'm mentioning it is that I did like an overnight hot oil treatment over the weekend, and I think it really helped. I'm not sure how well you guys can see, but I usually get like a lot of fuzzies up here, and I feel like it's not as bad as it usually is after doing the hot oil treatment. I don't know if anything else is different, but yeah, I figured I would just bring it up because if you're a curly girl and you're having issues and you're just like, I just don't know what to do, typically deep conditioning is the way to go, but every now and then you do have to switch it up. I know I get a few comments here and there talking about my hair, so if anybody ever wants to talk about it, let me know because I'm always down for that. But anyway, now that I have rambled on about nothing important so far, let's get into the purpose of today's video, which is to pretty much do a wrap up of the Smutathon. So this took place from June 3rd to June 9th, and I believe this was round 3 or 4 of the readathon. And something different that they did with this round was that there was a bingo board, and I think I might have briefly showed this off in my TBR if I kept that in there. But I did I have this like bookish bullet journal, and I did like put the bingo board in my journal, and I wanted to color it in with the titles that I read as I went along, so you can see the challenges that I completed. I was trying not to have any of my books count for multiple challenges because I was trying to see how much I can actually read. If I did count books for multiple challenges, I think I would have completed the majority of the challenges. But as you can see, I managed to read 7 different books throughout the week, and one of them I technically finished today, or Monday for you guys, but I'm gonna go ahead and count it for this readathon because I did start it. And if I didn't have some things going on over the weekend, we did a live show for the Wicked Spirits book club, so if we didn't have that this past weekend, I would have definitely finished that audiobook on Sunday instead of on Monday. So I'm just counting it for this readathon. I guess I'm just gonna go in the order that I finished them, just so it can make sense, and then I will tell you which challenge if it for. So starting with the first book that I finished that I'm counting towards Smutathon, that was Spell of Desire Volume 3 by Tomu Omi, and I gave this one 3 stars. If you've seen my past couple wrap-ups, I've talked about volumes 1 and 2. This one is following this character. Her name is Kuroku, or I'm probably saying that wrong. When we first start out following her, she is running this herb shop, and she mixes, like, she has her own garden, and she mixes all of these things together to make different products that the customers are looking for. So we know she makes teas and ointments and like things like that. And her grandmother has passed away, so she has been running this shop on her own. And one day this guy randomly shows up at her doorstep, and he tells her that her mother and her grandmother are actually both witches, and that her mother transferred her powers into her, and he was there to protect her along with the powers that were sent into her. So she was grappling with that situation, but by this point she has accepted the fact that she has these powers, and she's trying to learn how to use them. And there's also a blossoming romance between the two of them, and it's like the beginning stages of that, and them trying to figure out what's going on between them and how far they want to take things, as well as dealing with her being a witch and her trying to protect him because of some things that happen in the story. So as I've mentioned with these other, like with the first two volumes, if you haven't already heard me talking about those, I think this is an okay story. It's not one of my favorite stories. This is a manga series, if you don't know or can't tell from the cover, but this is a manga series, and I feel like it's an enjoyable read, but it's not something that I think everybody would love. Like, I'm just liking it pretty much. It's something I'm, at this point, I feel like I'm just reading it to find out how the story is going to go. I actually just finished volume 4. Like I said, it's a good storyline, but I feel like there's so much focus on the romance, and then there's not even really a whole lot of detail going into the romance. It's more her trying to control the powers and him making out with her, and I think at one point, I think maybe at this point, like having sex with her to help her either learn how to use the magic or control the magic. I think at this point we're starting to get a little bit more of extra stuff because she's learning how to control the magic and use it, but now we're also dealing with a lot of external conflict. And yeah, it's interesting, but it's not my favorite, and it's probably it's not something that I would recommend everyone pick up. And I used this one for the challenge of finishing a book in a day. It's manga. It's like 192 pages, and I'm not even sure if all of those pages are like actual story, because there's typically an extra story and then there's like little pages in between with notes from the author. The next one that I read was Once Ghosted, Twice Shy by Alyssa Cole, and this is book 2.5 in the Reluctant Royal series. This one is following Lakotsi and Fabiola. So if you've read the series, or at least seen the series floating around, Lakotsi shows up in the very first book, A Princess in Theory. She is pretty much like the assistant to the prince in that book. In that book, it's kind of quickly mentioned that she has this romance while she's in New York with the prince, but something ends up not going the way she expects it to, and she kind of just like doesn't want to talk about it. So in this novella, we are following Lakotsi and, like I said, Fabiola, which is the woman that she ended up having that relationship with back in the first book, and we find out what exactly happened during that time when she was in New York before, and them re-meeting and trying to figure out what happened between them two and if it can become something more. I knew whenever I picked this up I was gonna kick myself for not reading this sooner. I don't want to say I was shocked, because I really enjoyed the first two books in this series. I just absolutely love them. I don't know if this is the first book I read with the female romance. Like, I feel like it is, but this was, I'm gonna say this is like the first romance focused novel that I've read with the female relationship, and I just fell in love with them, just like with all the other characters that I have read about so far. I love this. I love the way everything worked out. I was frustrated with some of the things, but that just shows you how well her writing is, because I was feeling what the characters were feeling as they were going through it, which is amazing. And I ended up giving this one 4 out of 5 stars, and I used that one to count for the LGBTQ plus challenge. Moving on to the next one, I picked up Loving Mr. Daniels by Brittany C. Cherry. So this book is a dual perspective new adult romance, I believe, or that's what I would categorize it as, and it is following Ashlyn and Daniel. So we start off following Ashlyn. She's at the funeral of her twin sister. I think her sister was sick with leukemia, and she ended up passing away because of it, and she's struggling with her grief because her twin sister was like her person. Like, she was everything to her, and now she was no longer there. The day of her sister's funeral, her father is there, and he ends up telling her like, hey, your mom thinks it's best for you to come stay with me for a while. And she's really upset because her mother, she already thinks that her sister was her mother's favorite child, and she's just like, she really just does not want me here. It's like, what's the point? And she's just like, well, I have nothing else to stay here for, and she really has nowhere else to go. So she ends up packing up and going to live with her dad in Wisconsin, and on the train ride there is where she ends up meeting Daniel. They have this connection, but they don't really talk too much. But before he leaves the train station, he's just like, hey, you should come see me play at this bar. This is where it is, or this is what it's called. And yeah, he's just like, you should show up. So she obviously keeps the information, and she makes her way to her father's house, and she finds out that he is married and he has 2 stepkids, and they're pretty much around her age. And she is dealing with her grief and being in this new situation, and also trying to deal with the fact that her father has this whole family that she didn't know about, and she's just like, well, he didn't want to be around me and my sister, so you know, what gives him the right pretty much to have this whole other family. And she's just struggling with a bunch of different things. Daniel, on the other hand, is also dealing with a lot of grief. I think at the start of the story, his father had passed away about a week ago, and we find out that he has this really traumatic moment where his mother was killed and his brother was in the middle of the whole situation. I'm not going to get into all of that, but the two pretty much find each other and they end up having this connection. But on her first day of school, she finds out that Daniel is actually Mr. Daniels, and that's her English teacher. So they are struggling with deciding on what to do. You know, they're not supposed to have this relationship, but now they're stuck because they like have feelings for each other. As you can expect with the romance novel, they kind of end up disregarding that, even though they're not like, you know, obviously not like outright seeing each other, but they kind of sneak around the rules and still like manage to grow their connection with each other. And yeah, I don't want to get too much into it, but that's pretty much the basics of the story. Obviously, going into this, I was expecting just that student-teacher relationship that's not supposed to happen, but it still does. But this book ended up being way more than I thought it would be. It was so freaking emotional because there was so much grief. This is one of the few times where I felt so deeply affected by the emotions of the book. Like, I almost cried several times, and I actually did cry like towards the end of the book. And it was one of those times I was at work like, am I actually sitting here crying? But like, I couldn't help it because there were so many moments throughout the book where the characters were dealing with the grief. You know, at first I wasn't completely there with it because I don't know enough about the character to truly be affected by it. But not only is there like the main death with Ashlyn and her twin sister, and then her feeling like she's not wanted, then she goes to this new town. She has all of these emotions, like I said, about with her father and his new family. And then Daniel has this situation with his mother and his father and his brother. And then there ends up being like another death, which I'm not going to get into. And it was just like all so much. And I was just like, oh my goodness, I can't contain my feeling for this. Like, it was just a little overwhelming at times, but it was really good. Like I said, this ended up being way more than I was expecting it to be because I was just expecting it to focus on their student-teacher relationship. I feel like I'm talking in circles, but if you're looking for a really good story that has a lot of emotions going on with some romance as well, then I would suggest you guys check this one out. Ended up giving this one 4 out of 5 stars as well, and this one counted for the Forbidden Romance Challenge. The next book that I finished was actually a reread for me, and that was Intercepted by Alexa Martin. I decided to pick this one up because I put the audiobook on hold, and I think as soon as this readathon started, it was just like, here's your loan for the audiobook. And I decided to put this on hold because the second book, FOMO, came out earlier, like maybe a couple months ago or so, and I really wanted to read that. If you haven't already heard of this book, this follows Marley Harper. At the start of the story, she's dating this guy who's in the NFL. She's been with him for like 10 years. I think they started dating in high school, but he still hasn't proposed to her yet. And because of that, she's having issues with the other wives of the players from the team. But she soon finds out that he has still been cheating on her. That was an issue that they had in the past, but she had a moment where she told him like, this is it, I'm not gonna deal with that anymore. But she finds out that he was cheating on her, and she's just like, I'm done with it. And she's like, no more football players. When she was broken up with her boyfriend at a time before, she had met this guy named Gavin Pope, and they had like a night fling before she found out he was a football player, and she kind of just left because she was just like, he lied and I'm not for that. And right before they broke up, he ends up getting traded. I don't know if he got traded, but he ends up coming to the team that her boyfriend is on. And yeah, she's freaking out because she's just like, oh crap. Yeah, that's a fling that I never forgot about from like 4 years ago, and now he's here and I don't know what to do. But after Marley and her boyfriend break up, he's just like, well, now you're free and there's no reason why you can't date me. And she's just like, no, I'm not for the football players. She's like, I'm done with all of this. But he does everything he can to get her to agree to go out with him. Like, she ends up sticking to her resolve. They end up in a situation, I can't remember exactly what happens, but they end up in the situation where like they end up interacting anyway, and that ends up evolving into a relationship after she starts to trust him. And yeah, like I said, this was a reread for me. I ended up giving this one 4 stars as well. I think I had a lot of 4 stars. I really enjoyed the story overall. I thought that maybe it was just my mood when I was reading it that first time, but I didn't like the hashtags. I feel like some of them were funny, but the majority of the time I just felt like they were forced, and that could have just been me. And they kind of broke up the story, and I was just like, it didn't need to happen as much as it did. So I'm hoping that that's not also a thing that's in Fumbled. I'm hoping that that was just like this character's thing and nobody else's, because wasn't always the biggest fan of that. Had a few other issues with this, but overall I think it was a really strong debut novel. The romance was really good and I loved it. Also, I used that book for the challenge Author of Color. So the next one that I finished was Smut by Karina Hill, and this one is another new adult. This one is following these 2 characters. They are in the same creative writing class. They don't like each other at all, but of course at the end of the semester they end up being paired together and forced to work on a project. They end up finding out that they work really well together, and then branching off of that, the guy comes to her because he's just like, I need money because this business I'm working for is going under, and this isn't really what I want to do for the rest of my life. But he's just like, we work really well together writing, and I think we should do this. And like self-published books, it takes a little convincing, but she ends up agreeing to do that. We follow them as they begin writing erotica and self-publishing it. I thought this one was really good as well. I felt like it touched on some pretty interesting topics when it comes to self-publishing and other people's thoughts on like the romance and erotica genre, and how some people like look down on it. For the actual story, I think it was really well done, and I appreciated how the characters ended up coming together. I feel like some of the reactions to certain things that happened from the characters was a little extreme at times. Gave this one 4 out of 5 stars, and I used this one for the category of reader new to you author. The second to last book that I finished for Smutathon was 30 Day Boyfriend by Whitney G. I believe this one is actually a novella, and I'm pretty sure this was the second one that I read from her. I don't know if all of the books she releases are like this, but they're pretty quick reads. This one was like, I think 119 pages. This one is another one, I believe, told in dual perspective. This story is following this lady. She is working for this guy as his executive assistant. She's been working for him for 2 years. As start of the story is her 2-year anniversary of working with him. And she detests working with him, so she is trying to line up another job in order to be able to quit or get out of her contract with him, because she's just like, I can't do it anymore. He realizes that's what she's trying to do, and he's like calling literally all the places that she's going to. He's telling them, you better not hire her or I'm gonna have your ass, basically. So she's kind of out of luck. He's in the middle of trying to sign this deal, but he ends up having to work with this guy who doesn't want to sign over because he is single. He's kind of a playboy, and he's just like, look, I don't want to sign with somebody who doesn't have a family or isn't about their personal family. So he has this guy working for him who helps him like figure things out and like helps him make decisions. I don't know, I forgot what it's called, but the guy suggests that he ends up getting somebody to pretend to be his fiance until they get this deal signed off on. And at first he's against it, but he's just like, well, I guess I got to do whatever I need to do. And he ends up interviewing all these women. It doesn't end up working out. And like, she comes in, I think after the last one, and he was just like, I can't do this. And the guy ends up asking her all of these questions about him. And he's just like, well, there you go. You can ask her. So he ends up offering her a contract saying that if you pretend to be my fiance for the next 30 days, I will let you out of your contract. And then you can go do whatever you want to do. And at first she's really against it. But after negotiating the terms of the contract, she finally agrees, because she's just like, when else am I ever going to get this? They end up having to go back to his hometown and like go be with his family and all of these different things. In this process, as you can expect, a romance starts. Like I said, it's a novella. It's really short. I've already talked about it enough, and I'm like trying really hard not to get into spoilers. I thought it was okay. It was one of those stories, like, I enjoyed it for what it was, but wasn't anything spectacular. It was good. It was a good quick read. I gave it 3 stars. I ended up using this one for the fake dating category. And the final book that I finished for Smutathon, which, like I said, I technically finished on Monday, but just gonna push it in with that, and that one was Faking It by Kate Bromberg. This one is following another set of characters. This one is Harlow and Zane. Just finished this one, so I actually remember character names. But Harlow, at the beginning of the story, she is on her way to this job interview. She has this paperwork for where she needs to go for this interview, but it's smudged and she can't tell exactly which room she's gonna go to. So she's like, okay, I'm gonna take a guess from what I think it might be. And she goes one way. She ends up actually at his office, I believe, and he ends up mistaking her for his dog walker. So he hands her the leash, and the dog's just like, okay, let's go. You know, it's like my time to go out. Like, fooling around with him and his dog, she ends up missing her interview by, I think, like 5 minutes. And they're basically like, if you can't show up on time, then you're not good enough for the interview. Like, there's no point. And she's upset, so she goes and tells him off. Nothing really happens from that. So he ends up actually showing up at her house because she dropped some paperwork with her address on it, and she broke her heel. He brings her some new shoes. He's just like, hey, you should come to this thing that I'm hosting. And I think she tells him that she's a model, and he's just like, there are people there, or there are people that will be there. You can come make some connections and get your face out there and possibly get connected to some people who could get you some work. She says she's not going to go, but after talking to her mother, she's just like, you know what? I'm going to go, because who knows what'll happen. So she gets there, and of course she hears him talking like a pig again. And because of that, she decides to force her way into this position that he is talking to someone into filling, and he's trying to get out of giving her the position, because he already all but agreed that someone else was going to have it, or all but told someone else that they were going to have it. And he was just like, well, this is my girlfriend that I told you about, that I lied, they said I had, but I actually don't. And you know, she can't take it, because that would be a conflict of interest, her being my girlfriend. And the guy who he was talking to, who was like an investor in this business that he was doing, I kind of skipped over that. He was just like, you know what, no, that would be perfect, you know, you and your girlfriend being the spokesperson for this product instead of having some beautiful lady do it. So they end up having to pretend to be dating for, I think it might be like a couple months, or like maybe just a couple weeks, as they like go on this little press tour, because he's trying to launch this dating app. And yeah, they have to pretend to be dating for this investor while they're doing that. And they end up like on a tour bus. And this is one of those ones with not only the fake dating trope, but also like the one bed trope. And as you can expect with most fake romances, they end up leading into a real romance. And it was actually kind of adorable and sexy. So yeah, it was really good. I really enjoyed it. Another one that I gave 4 stars to. One I would definitely recommend. And I used this one to fit into the category of different worlds. So like I showed off, here is what I finished for the readathon. And then, you know, the challenges that they completed, and they are color coded. So I showed this off in my TBR video, but I guess it's kind of a sneak peek into what it looks like when I fill it out. So as you can see on this side, I do color code the stuff, and I do pages, and then I use those same colors when I was filling this out. So those were the 7 books that I finished for this round of the Smutathon. I was really happy with everything that I was able to read. If you participated in the Smutathon, let me know what you read, or if you have a channel or something, let me know that you put something up talking about what you read for the Smutathon. I think if you put links, they will like spam it. I usually go check, but now because I can't really check my comments and stuff at work because they have it blocked on YouTube for some reason on my work internet. So yeah, but just let me know. I will go check it out if you let me know that you have something up for this, or you can just let me know what you read in the comments if you participated. But that's all I have for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys again in the next one.